Hi there, I'm Bill Cherry, and I am in disguise tonight. You see my mustache? Isn't it just absolutely atrocious? But I'm going to stick it out, and then when I get it where it's the most it can be, maybe I might look like that guy on whatever it is, the policeman fella that sells everything under the sun on TV and does that funny motion. Man, he annoys me really, but he's good at what he does. Um, so here I am, and I want to ask you a question. Do you know why the Hollywood Dinner Club that was on 61st and Stewart Road got a permanent injunction almost 2 years or so after it was opened, and it was never allowed to open again, and the Maceos never ever tried to go around it. They just kept the property. Well, let me tell you what was funny about it. It's a paradox. You read for paradox? What they did was they and Dutch Voight had just been in business for a short period of time, a couple of years or whatever it is, and so they decided they were going to go in big time. And they built that enormous building with the beautiful property and all the fine furniture and everything on the inside, and they paid cash for it. They didn't borrow any money. And the feds were looking at their income tax, and they also saw they were starting to depreciate that building. And they said, hey, wait a minute. They didn't report enough money all the time that they've been reporting their income tax to have ever had enough money to pay cash for that building. So they filed suit against them in federal court. And as things would have it, since they had paid nothing but cash for anything, the government was able to all they knew was it was impossible. And the court agreed it was impossible, but they didn't know how much they'd done. They didn't have any idea, whatever else. And so they had to come to some compromise. And rather than put the guys in jail and all the other bad things that could happen to them, they decided that the best thing to do was to make a permanent injunction against that building ever being used again by the Maceos for a nightclub or a profit-making purpose. And so there it sat from the very early part of the 40s all the way through up into the war years, all up until after I was out of high school. It was still sitting there, and they kept it all closed and everything. And what was in there, fortunately, I got to go because I was friends with some of the Maceo children, and they kept a couple of ponies over there. Their family did, and so they invited me to go with them. So I went over, and then Mr. Sammy said, "Well, do you want to see the inside?" And I said, "I would love to see the inside. You know me, I'm curious. I want to know what everything's all about." So I went into the Hollywood Dinner Club, and they still had lights. They had running water. The thing was just like it was supposed to be, except it was a big storeroom of outdated slot machines and gaming material and a bunch of other stuff. But it was all put in there very, very orderly. And the dining room was the first room that you went in. And then on the other side of that was the gambling room. In between the two was the bandstand, and it had a proscenium stage. You know what that is? That's one of those that goes like this, that goes above it. And so what they did was that everybody that had performed there, they had them use what I guess was not a magic mark, a wood burning set, and they signed their name on on this the wood, the frame that went around that thing. It was so cool. It really truly was. It was just the coolest thing as you ever seen in your whole life. And so it sat there and sat there and sat there. And then some years later, I got a call from a guy. And he said, "You may be interested in knowing, but I have it on good advice that the Hollywood Dinner Club is going to burn this weekend." His name was Lloyd Lambert. Lloyd Lambert. And so he said, they've asked me if I would like to get one of the hobby horses, the fancy hobby horses that had run that big merry-go-round that were hand carved, get one out to save. And so they had given away several of them. And all the Maceos had one of some sort, I guess. And then sure enough, I think it was a Sunday night, the thing went up in flames. And there was no putting it out. It burned, 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 and everything in it went away. And they tore it down and they put the property on the market for sale. That's the Hollywood Dinner Club. And what you have to understand out of that is that you follow this along for all these many years, 75 years, probably 80 years, I don't know. The Maceos have all lived off of the money that that enterprise made. And for all practical purposes, none of them ever really had a job, a real job. They did, they ran a club for a while and they did something else. They got tired of it and so forth and so on. But I later learned from Mr. Serio, I said, where the devil is all the income coming from? He was the nicest man. I don't know why anybody ever said anything bad about Mr. Serio. He was the nicest guy on this planet. He was quite a gentleman. He dressed beautifully. He was well-spoken, and he knew what he was talking about. And he said to me, well, I'll tell you what we did. We invested in timberland in Louisiana. And as a result of that, we had quite a lot of it. And wouldn't you know, they struck oil about the time we ran out of money to be able to continue on in our racket. So the money never ends. Is that wonderful or what? I'm Bill Cherry. You can always depend on my stories. They come from the horse's mouth to me, and I gave it to you. Bye-bye. I'm Bill Cherry. I'm living in Dallas, although I would give anything to be back in my hometown of Galveston. I lived there a long time, and I knew all those people, knew them well, and I love them. Bye-bye.